I'm Sean. Behind me is a McLaren 570 GT, and in this video I'm going to do something that I shouldn't have to do. This customer, we couldn't get our schedules lined up for when he needed annual service and when he could actually get the car to me. He lives 2 hours from me. There's only certain days that he could bring it to me. I was never available, so he ended up taking his car to a dealer for annual service, what was needed for 5-year service. That dealer saw some things that he said needed to be addressed. One of those things was an airbag light, which they diagnosed to be the belt buckle. I will verify that. That does happen from time to time. So I got on top of that, but there's 2 other things that I'm going to look at. And the reason I'm going to look at those is because one of them doesn't make sense, and the other one is very expensive. Now, the dealer, who will remain nameless because people get upset when you name a specific dealer and they had good experiences with them. So we'll just come up with a pretty name for this dealer. We'll call this dealer Charlotte. So from here on out, instead of saying the McLaren dealer, we'll just say Charlotte. So Charlotte said that the V module, which is the oil cooler that sits on top of the engine under the intake manifold, they said that that had an oil leak, and that does happen on occasion. It's not super common, but it does happen on occasion. You have to remove the intake manifold to do that. But on a 570 GT, that means taking the engine out, because you only have access up here. You cannot do it. You have to take the engine out. So the cost of that repair is $9,152 according to the dealer. That is what they would charge for that service. So, by customer's request, he wants me to check it out while I'm doing some other things, unrelated to service. While I'm doing those other things, he wants me to check that out and see, is that something that's actually needed? And if so, then we'll go ahead and do it, and I'll do it for not $9,000. But I'm going to show you the process of checking this out in the event that somebody tells you that yours is broken. Maybe this is something that you want to check out yourself. But I'm going to show you because I haven't looked at it yet. And we're going to look and see together. Are they lying, trying to get them for $9,100? Or does it legitimately need it? After bringing the hatch up, first things first, remove that. It's clipped in by 2 little clips there. One side was not clipped in. It came up real easy. So that is that. And then to get the rest of this cover off, we've got to take these little rubber pieces out. And it is a 4mm hex. To get to the V module, under here we've got T30 bolts all the way around here that we've got to take out. Now the V module, it's way down in there. If you kind of see back down in there, silver looks like a bunch of coins stacked on top of each other. That's the V module. And I don't know if you can tell on camera because I can barely stick my head in there. It is totally dry down there. There is no leak at all. It's just not there. So, yeah. They taking him for a ride for $9,000. And I mean, you see what I had to take off here. This isn't normal for doing an oil change and annual service kind of stuff. You kind of got to really take things apart to really look for things. If you're after looking for something, okay, but
it'd be very atypical, but again, there's no oil leak.
Now, something I forgot to mention is this customer checks his oil level every 2 weeks. Since he's had the car, he has never seen the level drop every time he checks it. So it shouldn't be leaking because the level is consistent. He has also never seen anything on the floor of his garage, which is spotless. So you would think if it was leaking, it would somehow make it there. Now, I'm at the under tray right now, which I am going to take off. And we've got some mixed match hardware, which is not normal. But I do see a little bit of something that has been here in the past. And I'm going to take the under tray off, and this is where we get to two things. One, if you wanted to check for an oil leak from that V module, you'd probably see it right below it as well. Maybe you have it somewhere on the tray, so I'm gonna take the tray off, see if the tray's got anything on it. But the second thing that I'm looking at is going to be a coolant leak. So they did the coolant service, and they said that 2 O-rings at the water pump were leaking, and they said that after the service was done. Not while they're doing the service, which is when you would have first seen it, but after. There's also no O-rings on the water pump. So I'm going to check and see if there's any coolant leaks or any oil leaks, because those are the 2 things that they said were leaking. So this is the under tray, and this is a good way to figure out where something might be leaking from, because it'll sometimes saturate right there. We have nothing that's particularly wet, just a little bit right here, which would be from oil. You could also see if it was coolant, where it might have been dried or something like that. But since we're going to look for an oil leak right there, let's look up here, and that would correspond with right here. So we've got a minor oil leak right here at the water pump, which for the record is not an O-ring. There are no O-rings on there. That would be a gasket. All of these bolts are held in 7 foot-pounds. So what I'm going to do is go back and try to re-torque all these bolts and see if they move. This one in particular, if it does move at all, I'm convinced that's the leak. But I'm going to get this cleaned up anyway, and I'll end up doing some test driving and see. But that's not the V module. That's not an O-ring. I don't know what they're thinking exactly, but not a big deal. And this will probably tighten up and solve it. Obviously, I've cleaned this up, but I went through, hit all the bolts. This one, which is the one that had the oil on it, this one, and that one that's back there, all took more than a quarter turn. So they were definitely a little bit loose, and that would certainly be enough to make it start leaking from around here just a little bit. All the other ones were good to go. So I'm gonna say, 1, they don't know the difference between an O-ring and a gasket, and 2, that probably solved that very minor leak. Anytime we see that, that's usually what it is. Sometimes it's coolant, sometimes it's oil, depending where it is on that, but more than likely that's going to solve it. I'm going to test drive it and verify that, but yeah, it's another one of those things they're going to charge them for. All they do is re-torque it. I did that in a couple minutes. So what have we learned here? If you get a quote from anyone, even me, and you want a second opinion, definitely go get it. If it's something about the quote doesn't feel right, you know, in his case, they're telling me he has an oil leak, but he's never seen oil anywhere, never on the floor, never oil level down. In that case, you know, he just thought this isn't right, so he wanted me to check it out. Saved him almost $10,000 just because somebody else was lying. So if it doesn't feel right, get a second opinion. That's the best thing you can do. Maybe it is right and both tell you the same thing and it's good to go. Great. If not, maybe reconsider where you're taking your car to be worked on. That's all I'm going to say.